Hi everyone. This week's video is about the motivation of an ethical individualist. Is the action of a free, ethical individualist motivated solely by love? I came across this popular Rudolf Steiner quote, "Freedom is the sense of being capable of actions motivated solely by love." This may be the most popular quote in the anthroposophy movement. You see it everywhere. Is it true that all you need is love?
All you need is love.
Does the free spirit described by Rudolf Steiner cast off all restrictions and simply do whatever they love doing? Yes, of course free spirits may want to dance in the nude, but with only one condition. The action is their action. It is an individual action. An action is not your own if you are driven to act by external force, such as the urges of nature, group conformity, or programmed thinking. This is a simple quote. Here is a quote from the philosophy of freedom that is not as simple. It describes the ethical willing of a free individualist. While I am acting, the ethical principle moves me to act to the extent it lives in me intuitively. This intuitive ethical principle is united with my love for the goal that I want to accomplish by my deed. To better understand this, we can separate it into four parts. I, an individual, am acting. It is my action. The other three parts of ethical willing are the principle, the goal, and the deed. These three parts relate to moral intuition, moral imagination, and moral technique. When these parts all work together, individuality, ideal, goal, and deed, it is completely my action and motivated by love in the fullest meaning of the word. Let's go further into each part and compare it to other kinds of action. While I am acting, we want to discover the motivation that occurs while I am acting, and so long as I am acting. Beforehand, I can think out for myself what ethical principle I want to apply in this situation. Afterward, I can review the deed to understand what my actual intentions were. But we are interested in while I am acting. The ethical principle moves me to act to the extent it lives in me intuitively. The motivation to act begins with the selection of the ethical principle. The ethical principle is a universal thought. To reach up to the level of universal thought is a selfless act. Some say individualists should forget about themselves and instead become selfless. But selflessness is required to experience unbiased truth. Truth requires a devotion to the universal in thought. The ethical principle lives in me intuitively. This is the decisive factor of ethical individualism. An intuitive thought is a living thought. This can be observed by noticing the experience of a flash of insight. An intuition is filled with love, inspiration, and motivation. The ethical principle moves me to act. I am moved to act by my idea. This is what makes it my action. The moment I have grasped the idea of it, I spring into action. Ethical willing begins with an impulse to act. At this point, I do not hesitate. I do not stop to ask anyone, should I do this? I do not stop to refer to the rules. I act. Let's compare the intuitive ethical principle of the individualist with the acceptance of a moral code. We will use Starfleet's moral code on the Star Trek series as an example. The individualist selflessly selects his highest ideal to apply to the situation. If Spock wants a career in Starfleet, he applies the prime directive. The intuitive principle of the individualist inspires him and lives in him. It results in creative action. Starting with Starfleet's moral doctrine, Spock's reasoning will logically compute the best action to take, just like a machine. He is merely following orders. If your prime directive is to be a Christian, humane, selfless, or to further the progress of civilization, it is the same. When faced with a life situation, a mechanical moral process will produce a deed that is Christian, humane, selfless, and so on. Next, we move to the objective or goal of the action. This intuitive ethical principle is united with my love for the goal. The mind and heart unite in love for the goal. A goal is envisioned to realize my ideal in the world. It is my goal. Only when I follow my love for my goals is it I who act. It is not my action if I follow a goal imposed on me. At this level of morality, I acknowledge no lord over me, no external authority, and no so-called inner voice of my conscience. I recognize no external principle for my action. I have found the reason to act within myself. It is my love for the deed, for it is the deed that will accomplish my goal. The final part is that I want to accomplish by my deed. A deed is an action carried out with intention. The intention of the deed is to accomplish my goal. I am in love with the deed. While I am engaged in activity, I am immersed in what I am creating. I am motivated by my love for what I am creating. I do not consider whether my action is good or bad. I do it because I am in love with it. I do not ask what another person would do in my situation. I act as I, this unique individuality, wants to act. I am guided by my love for the deed. Some say it is our ethical duty to serve the common good, but duty rejects the right of individuality. Instead, it imposes an obligation to the values of common tradition, common custom, a common human maxim, or a moral norm. I feel compulsion when my action is driven by natural instincts or moral commandments. I feel no compulsion when I act out of my love for the deed. I simply want to carry out what lives in me. The final line of this paragraph in the Philosophy of Freedom would make a good poster to describe an ethical individualist. I simply want to carry out what lives in me. Thanks for watching, and remember to live and let live.